Hi, Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and here's another interview in my series of interviews with subscribers. Enjoy. Hello, everybody. It's Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and I have another fascinating interview with for you, Rented Lips, for you today. And this is with Amanda from Not Your Granny's Quilt Show, which is a title in itself that intrigued me. And we'll talk more about your YouTube channel in a few minutes. But first of all, let's get started by just finding out where you are. Where's home base for you?
I am located in Boise, Idaho, and thank you for having me on. I'm super excited to be here. So,
Oh, well, it's very nice of you to agree to an interview.
yeah.
Okay, so let's jump right in. How long have you been quilting?
I've been quilting for 6 years. I actually this month, 6 years ago, is when I made my very first quilt top. And then I've been long arming for 5 years. So,
Okay, so you're relatively new to the quilting world, as
mhm.
I am as well. In fact, you've got 1 year ahead of me on all
Oh,
of this. I've only been doing it for about 5 years, and
okay.
I have a long arm as well too. So, but you jumped in with both feet. You're started quilting, and you've got a long arm in the whole bit. So we're going to talk about all of this. But how did you get started into quilting then?
So my my mom has sewn most of her whole life, and she kind of tried to teach me when I was young, and I was just it wasn't for me at that point. So but enter my best friends in my mid 20s, I guess, early 20s, and two of the four of us had started quilting, and um they were together they were kind of doing a lot, and then the other two of us, me and Miranda, were like, that's cute, like we're excited that you're excited. And I was always like, that sewing's not my thing, whatever. And so they finally convinced us by dragging us to the fabric store and making us pick out fabric. And they were like, we're having a sewing day, so just be prepared. You're making your first quilts. And we were like, okay. So it was forced, but lovingly. And I think we did it wrong by spending literally the entire day sewing. And by the time I got home at like midnight, I was like in tears and just like, but once I saw the finished product, because my one friend Jen, she long armed it for me because she had started long arming before I did. And then the other one who quilted, Beth, she did the binding for me. So I just made the top, but then once I saw the finished product, I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. And so then, almost a year later, I took the long arming class, and the rest is history.
Rest is history, as they say. Yes, I can see that. So you were actually forced into quilting, and I think you're the first person I've
Yeah.
interviewed that would actually say that they were forced into it. So that's very interesting. But obviously, you ended up loving it. So I guess that was a good thing that you got forced
Yeah.
into it. So you said your mother always sewed as well. So was there
Mhm.
any quilters in your family, past generations?
My mom's grandma, like on her dad's side, she's the one who like taught my mom everything crafty. And she would sew blankets and things, and they had worked on like making yo-yos, and they had made a yo-yo quilt together. So there was some of that in there, but and my mom had made us like little blankets and things, but no, not like traditional quilting per se. So it wasn't really a family tradition by
Right.
any means, really.
So really, you're probably the first generation of serious quilters then in your family. I'd
Yeah.
say, yeah, that's interesting. And you want to know something? I have been finding that a lot with the interviews that I do, that it's almost like it skips a generation, you know,
Yeah.
which is weird. It's kind of weird, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite creation and why? Now, that is a trick question because what most people will say, my favorite creation is the one that I'm working on right now. Uh,
Yeah.
I think as cultures, we have short memories, you know.
Mhm.
Once it's done, it's done. We're moving on to the next project. At least that's the way I am. But do you have a favorite creation and why?
Oh man, that's tough. But I think if I have to choose, I would say my Travaya quilt, I did a pattern test with Katerina Rochella um in the spring of 20 2021, I think it was. I'd have to look back, but it's all in my Instagram, so
Yep.
people can sleuth if they want to. But she was releasing a pattern and had reached out on Instagram and said, "Hey, I'd really like some testers." And I was like, I love her. If you've ever listened to my show, I probably mentioned her at least once an episode because I'm just kind of an obsessed person. But anyway, I just love her fabric. And I had been holding on to a half yard bundle of all the prints of her Esoterra line of fabric. And I just didn't know what I was going to do with it. I just love the combo of dinosaurs and florals because that's just kind of who I am as a person. But um, um, when she reached out and was like, "Yeah, you can, I'd love to have you join." And I was working mostly from home because pandemic and all that stuff. But um, anyway, that I just loved how that turned out. It pushed me outside my comfort zone. It was the first time I'd made anything like it. And um, I just still, whenever I hang it up or I've got it out, I just stare at it because I'm like, I can't believe I made that.
I know you have moments like that, right? You look
Yeah.
at them and you go, wow, what an accomplishment. How did I manage that?
Mm-hmm.
But you must have been very, very thrilled when you're testing a pattern, and they just don't give anybody a pattern to test. They want people that have some quilting skills, who know what they're doing, and all that kind of stuff. And you were pretty new into quilting along like there, so that says a lot about your skill level and how quickly you've developed it. So you should be proud of that
Thanks.
for sure. And I'm looking at the beautiful quilt right behind you. Do you want to tell us a few things about that?
Sure. So my mom had bought me the layer cake. It's Peacock Pavilion. I can't remember the designer's name, but it's through Michael Miller Fabrics. And I love peacocks as well. So my mom thought it would be, a cute gift for me, which she was correct. And I just had another a white layer cake, and I initially just made half square triangles, but I was like, I don't want to just do another chevron or another
Right.
herringbone, or because my go-to is like, I'll just make half square triangles. But
Yes.
and then my friend Miranda was like, well, you could make those hourglass blocks, so you just half square triangle your half square triangles together. And I was like, oh, right. So I did that, and it was hanging, my flimsy was hanging in the closet in my quilting studio for a while, and I had the backing and the bind, I had everything. I just needed to quilt it. And um yeah, so then we finally got a really cool peacock feather panto, and I used pink thread, and the backing is the pink and purple peacocks. And yeah, it was.
Did you do free motion on it? It looks like it's free motion. No?
No, it's a pantograph. Yeah, it's a.
Oh, well, don't sound so apologetic for that. It's still a form of quilting. Yeah,
Yeah,
I suck at free motion. I have a
me too.
computer. I have a computer on mine. I
Hmm.
let I
Yeah,
let it
very.
do the work, and I am not ashamed to admit to it.
No, I
Those
think there's,
opinions, but
yeah. Well, and I think there's a lot of merit to both. I mean,
yeah,
there's free motion quilting is beautiful. It's amazing. That's not the kind of business I'm running, and that's okay. And I think, the people who do take the time to do that for others is like, I have nothing but respect and admiration for that. But I love being able to load a quilt, know that it's going to get the look that the person wants. I'm not having to design anything specifically. And I've digitized designs for custom work and all that. But um, yeah, I just love the uniformity and
yeah,
the personality that a good digital pantograph can give.
yeah. And at the end of the day, the average person can't tell the difference. Okay.
Mhm.
So, and I don't care what quilters say about that either. Many of them can't either, you know. And that's great. If you love to do free motion, do it.
Yeah.
And some people just have a natural talent for it, and that's great. But
Mhm.
I know for myself, I've tried, and maybe I'd get better with more practice, but the practice is eaten into my piecing time. So, it's a trick.
Right.
So, um, what type of quilter would you describe yourself if you had to give a label? And this is a hard question too. Would you say that you lean more to traditional, or are you more modern, or free form, or experimental? How would you characterize yourself?
I'd say more modern with a little more traditional flair. I love, traditional piecing, and I do like the modern designs, modern patterns, but I don't love, like, I don't want to do paper piecing necessarily.
Right.
I've tried it once and it was really tricky, and all I made was a clock face. But
I know what you mean. I know
yeah.
you get all screwed up on the paper piecing because everything's kind of like in reverse. And I have a tendency to cut my pieces of fabric too small. You know,
Uh-huh.
I've got this, damn, I got to cut it again. And I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm geometrically challenged.
No,
But
it's tricky.
yeah, but you say that you kind of lean a little bit more towards the modern. So is it more the modern style of fabric that attracts you, or design?
I think there's both. I love modern fabrics. Obviously color is a big thing for me. But I also love the more muted and kind of neutrals, or solid quilts, solid fabric quilts. But I think just the more the designs too, just how kind of clean they look. And I think in traditional quilting, there's the blocks are made up of so many tiny pieces, and
Hmm.
I understand that where that comes from, and that's great. But I personally, and I know that some people absolutely love it, so I'm not yucking anybody's yum, but for me, I hate small pieces. I hate
Yeah,
small piecing. It makes me want to rip my hair out, and I just would rather not. So
yeah, I agree with you. There's a certain size that I won't go to because it's just too fiddly for me.
hmm.
And that's when accidents happen. I'll probably sew my fingers to it.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing. So I'm assuming you're in your work area, or maybe not, and you're
Mm-mm.
not. So can you describe what kind of setup do you have for a studio?
Yeah. So I work out of my mom's house, my parents' house. I always say my mom's house because I'm just there working with her all the time. But so in their home, they have a really big room and they're upstairs. And this honestly like 90% of the reason that they bought this house. Because previously the long arm was in their basement,
Right.
in their other house. And so when they moved into this new house, it has a big room upstairs with windows and lots of light. And it was two bedrooms, but the previous owners had torn down the wall between and just opened it all up. And
Nice.
so we can fit the long arm in there. So she's Millie, she's in the center, kind of when you walk in, and then to the right is our cutting station, and we have one of those like motorized uh desks, like tables,
Yes.
so we
Yes. I
can
love
change
one
the
of those.
height. Yeah.
Mm.
And so my dad modified the top, so that we have a big flat cutting surface, and we've got our cutting mat on there. And on the along the wall, we've used IKEA like rods with like hooks and little buckets and to organize our cutting tools. And on the wall next to that, my dad built us a big box like out of really good sturdy wood, and we've mounted it to the wall, and that holds all of our rulers. I was like, what's the word? Cutting things. Rulers.
Right.
Um, and trying to think. In the closet behind that is kind of just remnants of minky backings that we've kind of pieced that we can use for smaller quilts, or flimsies that we've got for ourselves that we're just kind of keeping out of the way and just kind of storage. And then to the left of the machine is our sewing desk. So along that short wall, we have a longer desk where we can both fit.
Mm.
We've got two sewing machines. And then next to that is our ironing station. So it's just kind of all around.
Yeah. It sounds like
And
a great space.
hmm.
Really, lots of storage, lots of room to spread out and all that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So yeah, and with a long arm in it too. Yeah, that's a lot of space by the sounds
Yeah.
of things. So yeah, ideal.
Yeah.
All of that. But okay, so um let's talk about your equipment. So first of all, let's
Mhm.
talk about, you say you have a couple of sewing machines. So what
Mhm.
kind of sewing machines are those?
We are Bernina girls,
Mhm.
Bernina babes. We have a Bernina Artista 730, which we got in the summer of 2020. A quilt shop was closing out in northern Idaho, and we were up there visiting family, and so it was a an affordable foray into learning how to do embroidery because we wanted to be able to provide labels for people's quilts for our clients, and so we got that one. My mom has always sewn on a Bernina. Her personal machine is a Bernina 930 from the 80s. So that's cool. It's older than I am. Um,
They don't make them like that anymore.
no, it is a hunk of metal. It's
Yeah.
crazy, but it still works perfectly. And she doesn't use it as much for working just because it's her personal machine. But right now we're using it because our B535 is in for its annual servicing. So we have that for. We also got that on a great deal, which was kind of serendipitous, but that allows us to do um, embroidery as well. And so we kind of use that more for the embroidery because it does a better job than the 730, just because the 730 is its software has planned obsolescence, which means they planned for it to go out
Yeah. Yeah.
of
I know what you mean.
yeah, service of being able to be updated and all that. So with the B535, we've got some longevity with being able to update the embroidery software and all that. So yeah, those are our
So,
sewing machines.
and what do you, oh, just before I move on to my
Sure.
next question. So do you do a lot of embroidery in the quilting, or is that sort of separate?
It really just depends on the project because we make custom quilts. And so um in last spring I was making a lot of kind of graduation type things. So one dad had contacted me and wanted a quilt for his daughter who was graduating from the Ohio State University, and he wanted it to say that and her name and graduation year and all that. So I designed a big, crimson O with gray background and then a big kind of plaque across the side of the O that said the Ohio State University. Um, so that was incorporated into the quilt top, and then I had embroidered her name and graduation year in the border. Um, and I don't think we made a label for that one, but then yeah, a lot of times it's just a label that gets attached to the back in the binding like traditionally, but
Mhm.
yeah, some people want certain things
Yeah.
embroidered and incorporated, mostly a name or just like, a
Right.
message or something incorporated into the front. We've done like a breast cancer ribbon and a couple small things like that, but we haven't really gotten into the realm of doing the hardcore machine embroidery that we know is capable, that
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
machine is capable of, but our jam is more to provide those labels for quilts. So,
So now you say you have a long arm, and I think you said it's a milli, so that's an APQS, right?
yep, we've got the Millie 30
Yeah, that's
with
a
the
nice machine.
computer.
That's the biggest one. That's the big daddy. I have a Lucy,
Okay. Yeah.
on that. But yeah, the milli's the big one. So,
Mhm.
and do you use Quilt Path on that then? Yeah,
Yes, we do. Yeah.
all works and everything. So yeah, and you've had the space for it and the whole bit. But the long arming world of quilting is such a different area, as I have found since I got mine. I've only had mine for about a year, and that
Okay.
I'm still, learning. I love it, but no more
Yeah.
getting down on your hands and knees trying to baste a quilt. Uh, that alone is worth the price of a long arm, as far as I'm concerned. I can get down, but getting back up's not so easy. But
Right. You're like,
you
I
know,
live here now. I'm on the floor.
yeah, that's right. Just feed me here. Yeah, kind of a thing. Throw me a bone. But so is there a reason why you went to an APQS? Because I mean, we've got handy quilters, we've got gamels and things like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. So actually at our local quilt shop where we learned, they teach on APQS, Millie and Lucy. I mostly quilted on Lucy when I would rent the
Right.
long arm there. Um, but we both were trying to be there all the time. My mom and I both just, and it was just hard to get in. And, the time crunch of like, okay, I've only got so many hours and I've only got this time slot. And they're pretty good about being like, hey, your time's up, time to go. And which is fair because they've
Yeah.
got their own, business to run and all that. But, and my husband's kind of like a businessy idea guy. So he was like, well, you guys could just buy one and then make it a business. And my mom was like, I don't know. It's kind of a big deal. And he was like, what's the worst that can happen? You have a long arm that
Yeah.
you make payments on. My mom was like, huh.
There you
She's
go.
like, okay. So we went with APQS in mind just because it was what we were familiar with. We knew we liked the make of it, the construction, how it worked. We knew a little bit about it just from kind of digging around online. And we went to a quilt show in Utah specifically because we knew that APQS was going to be there. But we also were like, we'll just test other things and see if anything else makes us go, oh my gosh, like it's worth switching. And we just didn't. We tried the Gamel, we tried the Handy Quilter, we tried even the Bernina long arm,
Mm.
and it was nice, but there was just something about the sturdiness of the APQS and the local to the US, I guess, like
Right.
customer service and production um and we just were kind of like you can't beat their customer service and their
Yeah, that's
guarantee,
true.
their lifetime guarantee. I mean, that alone, my mom was like, because as long as it passes to me, you know, whenever that is, like I still get to keep that because I
Right.
was one of the original purchasers. And so, um, and just that, had it 6 months in, we had a huge run in, huge problem. Like the pantograph would set itself about a half an inch to the left every row we advanced. And so my mom would sit there for so much time nudging it, nudging it, nudging it to get
Yeah.
it back in
Mhm.
place. And she was like, I can't run a business like this. And they worked with us until we figured out what the problem was. And we essentially replaced all the guts of the machine by the time we figured it out. So we're like, well, but it didn't cost us a dime. And, they stuck with us through all of it. And anytime I've called to get help, they're like, oh yeah, here's what you do. You just got to do this, this, and this, or I'm sending you over an instruction page with, photos and stuff on how to fix that thing. And it's just for the longevity that we want out of it and for how much we have it running. And, we just wanted that guarantee that it was going to be usable for
Yeah.
a long, long
For a long
time
time.
and
Yeah.
not
It's
break
it's a
down.
big investment.
It is.
Like my system, I could have a car for what, a nice
Yep.
car
Oh yeah.
that I spent on it. So yeah,
Yeah.
and I found too their customer service is excellent as well
Hmm.
with them. But I think you made a very important point there. If you're looking at long arms, then the best place is to go to a show where there's going to be all the manufacturers there and test drive them. Because you're
Hmm.
right, it's not saying necessarily that one machine is far superior to another, but it's a feel. It's like a car. If you're buying a
Yeah.
car, you get in there and you sit behind the wheel, if it feels right or not. It's the same with a long arm, I think. Too.
Yeah. No.
So, do you have then a favorite tool or technique or something that you go to time and time again, minus the long arm, minus sewing machines? Because those
Um,
are
yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I I'm like trying to think what I use. I'm like a basics kind of gal. If I get too many tools in front of me, I go crazy. But okay, this is my standout. I love my Quilter Select 6-inch by 24-inch ruler. Their like no slip technology on the back sides of their rulers is like unmatched. I've never used another ruler that says like, oh, non-slip that has actually been non-slip.
Mhm.
And I can't live without. I hate cutting fabric, which is, you know, yardage makes me want to cry, which, again goes back to like why I want to make house square triangles all the time because I can just buy layer cakes and call it good. But that thing makes it so much easier. because
Yeah.
it doesn't slide. It doesn't move.
I have heard that about their rulers. Unfortunately for me to get my hands on one, I would have to order it from the
Mhm.
States. And right now, prices with the way our dollars are different in Canada, and shipping is
Yeah.
economical. So, but as
Yeah.
soon as I get down to the States sometime or whatever, I'm going to be hunting for the Quilter Select, or maybe somebody up here will eventually get, a deal or something where they'll start getting them into their stores. Um,
Yeah.
but if you had all the money in the world, is there a
Mhm.
piece of equipment you would invest in?
I'd buy another long arm, honestly.
And would you go
Because
for the same style, same size?
I might get a little small. I might get a Lucy. I'd still computerize it, but I might get a Lucy just because um the Millie 30 is heavy.
Mm-hmm.
She's a beast. But so for any type of free motion, anything, it is just hard.
Yeah,
She does what she does really well with the computer, and that works great. But I would like a Lucy, or just a
right.
smaller model, so that anybody, because my besties do rent our machines from us. We don't necessarily offer that to
Mm.
anybody,
Yeah.
because
Well, you just don't
we
invite
know they've
yourself.
taken the class.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and it's so occasionally, it's not like a big part of our business, but anyway, yeah, I would just like a Lucy, but I would get the full
The,
gamut of bells and whistles.
oh yes.
So
Oh yes. Well, when you're spending that kind of money on a machine, you might as well get it all, because
yeah.
it's if you go back to do some of these upgrades later, it's going to cost you, if you can even do, some of those things you
Mhm.
just can't upgrade after you've had
Yeah.
the machine. So yeah, that's true. So have you ever belonged to an in-person group, like a design group or a quilt guild or an online group? And if you did, how'd that work out for you?
Yeah, so I'm actually an active member in a local quilt guild called Boise Basin Quilters Guild. I am on a subcommittee for membership, so I actually host new member socials. So, which is we reach out to any new um, member signing up and give them an opportunity to meet with me and other new members, and sometimes other guild members will come. But we just chat about the guild and what they can do in the guild and what kind of opportunities there are, and small groups within the guild as well. And so that's and I'm also helping with the redesign of the website. I'm not designing it, but I'm working with the team that's
Right.
talking to the company that's redesigning our website. So that's been kind of fun.
Well, it's nice that your guild has this, like, makes makes a point of welcoming new members in, because I remember when I joined the guild that I was in, it was kind of a scary thing. Of course, it might have been scary because it was 100 women and me. So that might have been doing
Yeah.
it for me a little bit too. You walk into the room, suddenly someone scratches the record off, and
Yeah.
the drinks all come down on the bar. It's like, you're new in town. What are you doing? Kind of a thing. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice that there's make people feel welcomed in the guilds, because guilds are just a wealth of knowledge, let alone, especially if you're a beginner quilter,
Mhm.
join a guild, because you're going to learn a lot more than you ever
Yeah.
expected. So, when you're getting your supplies, now I know that you and your mother are running a business, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. So,
Mhm.
you probably are able to have get your hands on supplies more so than maybe the average quilter, because you probably do wholesale and things like that. But do you have some favorite sources of supplies? Is it a brick and mortar? Do you have a lot of quilt stores in your area, or do you do it all online, or a combination?
We do a little bit of a combo, but for the most part, we try to shop local when we can. So we've got a couple local shops that we love. The Quilt Crossing is one, and that's where we learned how to long arm and all that. And they're huge. They're a huge store. They've got the most bolts, I think, in the valley, which is kind of cool. And they've been around since the 80s, so it's kind of a cool establishment.
Yeah.
And then another quilt shop that we love is called JK Quilts. And it's just technically the next town over, but it
Yeah.
all runs together. So
Yeah.
it's the same spot. But yeah, they both offer just slightly different kind of perspectives on quilting and fabrics, and just having those two places is really nice. And then as far as getting supplies goes, I mean, that's kind of where we'll shop for fabrics and things, but for like notions and stuff, we'll just kind of get it wherever we can find it, on sale. Or yeah, we run a business, but sometimes wholesale accounts aren't necessarily even any better than like getting a sale at Joann's, or finding something on sale on Amazon or another online outlet, because we utilize, Fat Quarter Shop and Missouri Star and all that too. So we
Yeah.
just kind of get stuff wherever we can find the best pricing. And
Yeah, well, that makes economic sense, doesn't it? In this day and age,
yeah.
I mean, fabric's been going up a lot, at least in our
Hmm.
country, and I think it's probably the same for you
Yeah.
as well. COVID, suddenly there's whatever that's causing the prices to all go sky high. So if we can save a few
Yeah.
bucks here and there, well, that's the name of the game. So,
Yeah.
do you have some favorite experts that you turn to for inspiration or for guidance, and maybe something new that you're doing, or what?
Hmm. Yeah, I do. I mean, I think Instagram has been a wealth of knowledge for me. I follow a lot of creators on there. And yeah, I don't think I have necessarily one kind of go-to, but I think I have learned a lot from, the tutorial videos through Missouri Star. Jenny Doan is classic. And so that's where, yeah, I honestly have learned a lot. And I just kind of absorbing the content of Angela Walters, and just how she talks about long arming. And even though, a lot of her quilting is on her domestic that she shows her tutorials on, it just the way she talks about it and the way she was explaining design, and that really kind of helped me wrap my head around some things about even the digital pantographs. And I'm trying to think of who else. I mean, obviously Katerina, I look to her for design because I love her eye for things, and her patterns are always beautiful. Um,
A lot of them out there,
I
that's for sure. You can go
Yeah,
down the rabbit hole of YouTube videos with them all, and next thing you do, you wake up and it's 2 weeks later, uh kind of a thing, at least for
yeah.
me. And
Like,
when you
what
talk
day
about
is it?
Angela Walters, I really miss her show that she used to have, the midnight quilting, or whatever she called it. I
Yeah, me
love that,
too.
her glass of wine sitting over on the side, and I was always amazed, because
Yeah.
that's when I first got into quilting, watching her use a domestic machine. She makes it look so effortless. I even bought her rulers. Yeah, I didn't become a
Yeah.
Walters out of that one. But
Dang it.
yeah,
You can't just buy your way into it.
yeah, I thought, really, if I buy the rulers, I'm going to be perfect. First time, lay them down, they'll practically quilt itself. Didn't work. Didn't
Yeah.
happen that way at all. So let's talk about your YouTube channel now. So how long have you
Okay.
had it, and why did you start it?
It's been about a year and a half since I started it. Um, really, and again, I mentioned my husband because he's the ideas man, but he's like, you should really start a quilting podcast. And I was like, who's gonna listen to me? Like, are you kidding me? He's like, no, seriously, like, I really think you should, like, with the business and all the things, like, I really think you should do it. And I was like, because, that's when my imposter syndrome kicks in. And I'm like, I'm nobody. Nobody's going to talk to me. And then, a year later, I'm talking to my idols, and I'm just like, oh, okay, this is crazy. So yeah, it's been about a year and a half. My friend Miranda started it with me, because I just didn't want to do it alone. And, you know, she's still working full time at her job that she's not going to leave anytime soon. And it just kind of was one of those things where she had to choose. And I 100% respect that. We're still best friends. We still talk about quilting nonstop. But so I think that was really nice for me, because it gave me some confidence to kind of be like, yeah, I can do this now. I've got this. And so when I started reaching out for interviews was when it kind of got sweaty for me, because I was like so nervous. But and Katerina was one of the first ones I reached out to, because I had had the rapport with her from testing patterns with her. I was like, I'm gonna just ask her. And what's the worst she can say? And if she says no, I'm gonna be devastated, but that's okay. Like I'll get over it maybe.
Yeah.
And
Right.
but she said yes, and I was like
Mhm.
screaming. I was like, I was freaking out. But she's genuinely a nice human. So
Yeah.
it was, of course she's gonna say yes because she just is that way. But yeah, just the different people I've been able to reach out to has been amazing. So
Yeah, well, I've watched the interviews and that you've done on there, and they're great. They're so interesting, and yeah, you should be proud of yourself that you have that up and running and everything like that. Never second guess. It's a lot of work, and
mhm.
I can see why your friend had a pull back from it if she's working full time, because doing YouTube could be a full time job, and some people do
Yeah.
think it that as well. I'm not one of them, but
No.
you can. I eat into my quilting time, so I got to use a
Yeah,
balance there.
exactly.
But so you've also, oh, we should say the name of it, not your granny's quilt channel, no, quilt
Yeah.
show. So,
Mhm.
so why did you pick that title? It's very catchy.
Yeah. Well, when we were rolling around with names, because Miranda again was helping with that process, we were just thinking of like, we're like, okay, there's a million shows out there with quilt puns or sewing puns, and we were just looking for something that would stand out, that would make somebody stop and go, wait, what's this about? And it does kind of embody our style of quilting. We are millennials. We are trying to figure out what the hell, Gen what no boomers did to our economy. um I say that
Careful,
with
I'm a
love in my
boomer.
heart. Yeah. Oh my god,
Well, a
I
late
say
boomer.
that with love in my heart. But um no, just that kind of navigation of what it is to discover a passion for making and digging into the tradition of it, but also making it modern and making it your own and not following any rules, and you know
Like
just
the
doing
hell with
it.
the quilt police. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Like, just let me make what the hell I wanna make and leave
that's
me
right.
alone. Like, I didn't ask you, you know? Um,
What I like about the name though too is a lot of people when they think of quilting who aren't involved in it, they think it's something a bunch of old ladies do. And,
exactly.
and yes, the majority of quilters, I would say right now, are older people, but there's a
Mhm,
reason for that. It's because the older people tend to be retired. I am retired. I have the time to
mhm.
invest in this hobby. And once you retire, you need something to do. If you've been working, 30, 40 years of your life, you need something else to do to keep you going, or you just curl up in a ball and die, is my
Exactly.
philosophy on that. And
Yeah.
that's why I love quilting, because it challenges your brain. If you've got any kind of creativity or any interesting creativity at all, there's plenty of inspiration there. But what I'm
Mhm,
liking now, and you're part of it, and you use the term millennials as well, is that younger people are slowly starting to come into it. And if we
yeah,
want this craft to carry on in the future,
yeah.
then we need younger people in it. And younger people do bring a fresh new look to it. They're not
Mhm.
afraid to break the rules. They'll slap those quilt police right across the chops and say, I'm going to do what I want to do. So bye bye to you. And I
Yeah,
think that's great. I think that's refreshing. And I think it's going to bring a whole lot to the quilting community in terms of design and style. So yeah,
yeah,
you're part of that movement, though. That's the way you should look at it. So,
yeah. I'm
and I feel,
trying.
yeah. So let's talk about your family business. Then you're in business with your mom, and so what are the services that you offer?
So we just started out, um, with just long arming. So we would long arm for people. And binding, we do binding services as well. And then we've slowly kind of worked our way into our biggest service that we offer now is custom quilt making. And so we get hired out and through Etsy. So when I stopped teaching to work in the business full time with my mom, um we were just getting kind of word of mouth clients, and I was like, this isn't going to sustain our business. Like, we have to do something different. And so we started an Etsy shop, and we sell a little bit of fabric there on there. We're Shannon Fabric. We're a Shannon Fabrics
Hmm.
representative dealer. I don't know what we're called. Anyway, we buy and sell Minky. Um, so we sell that through our Etsy. And then I was like, I want to make a listing for custom quilts because people are asking us to do it kind of randomly, but I want it to be something that we can offer. And so I put that up and it was immediately like we immediately got so busy with it. And
So how does
um,
that work? If someone wants a custom quilt,
mhm.
what do they do? They just come to you and say, okay, I have this idea, and you sort of work with them and formulate it?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, if we're working through Etsy, it's just a lot of messaging back and forth. Usually people have a general idea of what they want and they'll send inspiration photos or fabrics or, I just want a lot of it is memory quilts. So we get boxes mailed to us all the time of clothing and other, items that people want put into a quilt. Which, funnily enough, I didn't think that that was going to be as big of a deal as it is, but there's not really many people offering it out there. So I've talked to so many people who are like, I hate making t-shirt quilts. I hate making quilts with clothing. But I think because my mom's background of sewing everything and making apparel and making home decor and doing light reupholstery kind of things, like she has the knowledge of how to work with all these different fabrics and how to
Right.
kind of make them work together. And so we're able to bring those projects together for people. But yeah, we just a lot of messaging and a lot of questions. We ask a lot of questions because we want to make sure that our clients are happy and
I,
um
I'm sure it could be very trying though, too, because I mean, here you are trying to find the middle ground of one person's vision and your interpretation of that vision. And
mhm.
yeah, have you had any horror stories? Maybe I can
Mm,
ask.
not horror stories per se, but I just think there have been a couple times where it wasn't our visions didn't quite align and at that point it's like it is what it is. I
Yeah,
can't
can't go further.
completely undo this quilt, or
Yeah.
And there have been a couple times where the long arming wasn't right or something went wrong with it and it wasn't necessarily noticed on our end,
Mm.
but then, we always offer to make it right. So I've unpicked the long arming off of entire quilts
Oh
before,
God.
redone them, and it's not often. I think it's happened a total of 3 times in the 4.5 years that we've had our business. So it's not been too terrible, but that's why like it just helps us refine our process really. Like we've looked at every single instance as an opportunity to learn and um sometimes people don't know what they're asking for
Yeah.
and so just really working through that, like, instead of being like, "Oh my god, this person doesn't know what they're talking about," like, just trying to gently explain, like, "I'm not trying to like, please don't read into this. I'm just explaining the process so it helps you
Yeah.
understand what I'm talking about." And, um, usually eventually we get there and it's not for everybody. It costs a lot of money
I was
and
going to say, I'm sure it's very expensive because it's
Mhm.
very time intensive for one.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you're right. I have not heard of this is the first that I've ever heard of anybody doing like on a business level custom quilts, making custom quilts like that. So
Mhm.
you've really got into possibly something that you're in at the ground level with, but it's not for the faint of heart, I'm sure.
No.
Just I can just imagine. That's why I kind of asked the question about horror stories because I imagine there have been
Yeah.
moments when you'd probably like to destroy the whole thing, but
Yeah.
but
There's
we won't go into those.
yeah,
We will
like
protect those the innocent, I guess, out there.
yeah.
So, do you have any challenges or goals in the future in terms of things you want to do, possibly things in the direction you want to take the business or your YouTube channel?
Mhm. Um, right now I think my I guess for my YouTube channel, my challenge is to just keep getting more and more people to interview and chat with. And I do have a goal of I want to talk to all the Ruby Star girls. So I'm like I keep putting it out there. I'm like, I'm manifesting this. This is gonna happen. They're gonna talk to me. Um, because again, they are designers that inspire me all the time, and I just love that they all come from kind of different perspectives of design, and their personalities speak through their fabrics and their work. And so anyway, so for that, yeah, I just want to keep chatting with more and more people and just getting to those people that I really want to talk to. And but for the business, I think right now we're in a really great place. We're growing kind of steadily as far as, yeah, the custom quilt making goes. We're gaining more long arming clients, which is awesome. Um, and neither of us are really interested in making it huge as far as like owning a building or,
Right. Yeah.
having a separate space and all that stuff. So it's really working for what we want and our definition of success for our business. And so
And you enjoy it, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, because when you say, you don't have any desire to go into a separate building and all that kind of thing, because I think the danger there is that's when you start loving it and it becomes a, job, and
Right.
you lose all the joy in it. And I've always said that when people, I'm sure you heard this too when you first got your long arm, there would be people coming to you and saying, oh, are you going to do this as a business? Well, in your case you did,
Mhm.
as a business. But that I've been asked that many times, am I going to do it as a, no, I am not. Well, why do you have a long arm? For me. For
Yeah.
Because it brings me joy. If I had to do somebody else's quilt on it or whatever, unless they're a really close friend, I would do that for a really close friend. But just for
Sure.
the average Joe out there, no way. Too much tension, too much pressure. No, I would blow it. I would make mistakes at that point. If I make them on my own quilt, that's okay. On somebody else's, no. And if they're paying me for it, even more so, no.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to put myself through that kind of hell. But
Yeah.
for you it's a little different because this is part of your livelihood, it's not mine.
Mhm. Yeah.
So but yeah.
Sure. Mhm.
So do you have any advice for anybody who wants to get started into quilting? Because when they watch our YouTube channels and they watch all the interviews we do in that,
Mhm.
there are people out there that go, oh, I've never thought of this, maybe I'd like to do it.
Yeah. I just think my biggest piece of advice is to just start. I mean, just start simple, and if you see a technique that you want to try, just try it. I mean, I think for me especially, I get really nervous and I'm gonna mess stuff up. My perfectionism comes out and rears its ugly head, and I just have to quiet that voice and say, "No, I'm gonna just try it. I'll get some scraps or whatever and just let it rip." It's the best time to learn is when you fuck stuff up. Sorry.
That's right,
When you
that's okay.
when you make mistakes, and that's how our brains learn. I mean, coming from the education perspective of like I was a teacher for a long time and this is my jam, like you can only learn when you make a mistake and then
Exactly.
try to learn from that mistake. And as a human being, that's where you gain confidence and that's where you gain the ability to do other hard things. And so I just say jump in and just try it and ask all the questions.
Mhm.
And that's my other biggest piece of advice is if you're watching someone's tutorial and something about it doesn't make sense, reach out to them. Like 9 times out of 10, they're going to answer you and help you out because they want to help you. They want you to be successful. And yeah.
I can see that you used to be a teacher because just what you just said all here about learning from mistakes, asking questions, that's what I used to be too as a teacher.
Mm,
So those are all primary elements of a teacher on there.
mhm.
So, and that's probably why watching your YouTube channel, you can tell that as well because of the organization, the structure, the way that it's all laid out. It's a teacher's thing. Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
thanks.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, is in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I really want to thank you for this interview. This has been very enlightening. But before I go, I just want to see if you have any last words, anything more you'd like to say.
Not really. I'm just super grateful for this opportunity. And I'm really loving what I'm doing. And I'm super grateful to the quilting community for what it is and what it has brought to my life. And so just being a part of being able to encourage that in others is really meaningful for me. So I really appreciate this.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, it is a wonderful community. I have found that too, as well. So thank you
Mm.
so much, Amanda.
Yeah.
I will put your link for your YouTube channel. And if you want to send me the link for your Instagram or whatever, I can include that too. It'll be in
Awesome.
the show notes below the interview so people can seek you out and check out all the wonderful interviews you've already done with other people and the other things you have to offer on there. And yeah, thank you so much. And don't go off the line yet. But
Okay.
again, I think this was wonderful. Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great day. What's
You
left of
too.
it.